I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect place or a perfect society. But it is possible to have a good society which is healthy, which is free, and which is well-functioning. Academia is not for everyone. And lots of smart people don't like to go into academia, or they don't want to do those kind of subjects. And that's completely okay. Why can't society support people who want to be like construction workers, like welders or plumbers or electricians? I feel like there is a massive skills shortage across the developed world for these skills. And look, if you're like a top of the line plumber, like you know what you're doing, or an electrician, or even a steel welder.
There should be some sort of hierarchy for you.
And look, they get paid a lot of money, right? They get, like, some of these guys get paid more than doctors, or on a comparable level to like doctors.
Yeah.
So why isn't society doing more to support that? Hello everyone, and welcome to the 14th episode of the Zero Filter podcast.
We're coming from a very weird location. We're coming from Whampoa, so just looking at the incredible Hong Kong skyline as it descends into as it gets towards nighttime, I guess.
Real poetry coming from
Real
David.
poetry. I was thinking about what I was going to say, but well...
Look, the view looked fucking sick,
we just finished the 13th episode with Philip, and we finished Philip's podcast.
Okay, so David, what are we talking about today?
So today we're going to talk about, essentially...
building an ideal society.
Yeah, something a little bit more philosophical. Building an ideal society, and what we think an ideal society should look like in terms of the way it's run, politics, the different policies that you implemented, bureaucracy, and all that kind of stuff. And we have this massive opinion because we see what's happening with the rest of the world, and we want to kind of talk about that and kind of have our say about what our perfect ideal society is, just like how Plato did have one and how other Greek philosophers did have one. Just to give a bit of background, right? Because you know where the word utopia comes from, because topia means place, and you means good, right? Yeah. But then somewhere along the line, I think it was Thomas More, he took away the E from utopia, so it went from a good place to no place, because he thought it can't exist. And I actually agree with that. I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect place or a perfect society. But it is possible to have a good society which is healthy, which is free, and which is well-functioning. Yeah. And I'll just sketch out what I think really quickly, and we'll see if you agree. Sure. So, my philosophy is always been it's better to have a small and decentralized society than one large central government deciding everything. Okay. Because it's always better for local people to decide on. And I can interject and say my view. Yeah, definitely, definitely. So I will say, for me, I believe it should follow that kind of system. But then, how would big countries be run? So that would be my problem, right? Okay, I feel most medium-sized countries like Finland, Sweden, and Norway run on those kind of systems, and they work absolutely well because it's just like economics, right? Once you get to a certain point, it's like economies of scale, and there's economies of scale once it gets too big, and people get mismanagement, and people don't really get into the kind of politics, and they feel marginalized as a result. Right?
It's not even marginalized. It's just that the incentives are completely skewed, because instead of catering to what your local community needs, you're trying to play politics.
They're catering towards the country's needs, which is completely different to what the community and what the
village not even the country's needs. What the kind of central political.
So I associate this with economies of scale because it's like running a business, right? The smaller your business, for example, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Kung BJJ, is a very small business. For example, let me just say this, okay? It's a small business, right? So and we feel so much more connected as a small business because it has.
Do you think you feel the same way about Jiu-Jitsu if we were part of a franchise gym?
I don't think so. That's the thing. If we were going to a franchise gym that was huge, would feel more disconnected with the people. I mean, obviously, the culture would absolutely enhance my experience, but I feel like it's just different, and that applies same with the country. Just to go back to the whole how to build a nation kind of.
And look, there are economies of scale, but there are also diseconomies of scale.
Yeah, and exactly. If it gets too big, then it's too much. But obviously, most countries are aiming, or most companies or most countries are aiming to kind of grossly enhance their gym. But there is a downside to enhancing your gym too much, and that is, diseconomies of scale.
Okay, I think we should move away from gyms.
Or another gym, but your country.
Let's talk about concrete examples.
Yeah.
Russia. Russia is one example of a huge kind of continental landmass becoming, and that's why I would argue it's run quite badly. I wouldn't want to be a Russian. Yeah. Now,
Russia is way too big to be managed sometimes. Yeah.
look, the United States gets a lot of shit, right?
Yeah.
For like being like, oh, people are stupid, or like Donald Trump, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at the United States in the grand view of history, it's actually done a really good job of maintaining a large country while maintaining freedom. And do you know about the Federalist Papers and stuff?
Yeah.
So like when they split apart America, and they said that America should be run on a federal principle. It is that so you've got different states, and then those states can run their own internal affairs, but they all have to kind of obey a larger
body.
Yeah, which is the federal government and the United States Constitution.
And I absolutely agree with that kind of model, right? Because it's more about like catering for those individual states.
I feel like it's good for large countries.
To adopt that kind of model. Yeah.
I feel like Russia, like places like Russia, India, and China would have a lot to.
Yeah.
Would benefit a lot
what
from
would you say
federalism.
about Canada's model?
Canada? Look,
Because Canada only has 14, has a similar landmass to the US, but they only have 14 states instead of 50 states, right?
and also Canada isn't that kind of populated. Let's be honest.
Okay, I agree.
It's got barely any people.
I wouldn't say that, but I mean, I wouldn't say they barely have any people, but I think like
But I think
they kind of generate, they have like different, just like Australia, for example. Australia's a big country, right? They kind of separate their kind of states or territories by that landmass, right? For example, New South Wales is a landmass by itself, but it's way smaller than, for example, like the middle of Australia, because it's just so much there's so much more densely populated.
I mean, look,
right?
at the end of the day, I think it really does depend. Like, your view of the good society will change according to your circumstances. So, for example, on the big end of the scale, we've got the United States, which I think for a big society is doing really well. If you're talking about a small country, I think Switzerland is the best way to go, because I don't know if you know much about Switzerland, but even though it's got French, Italian, and German people, the reason why it works is because it's decentralized into semi-autonomous cantons, and so and so that's how Switzerland's run. And then from Switzerland, you get down to the city level, Hong Kong or Singapore, and that will be run differently as well.
Yeah, and how would you think Hong Kong was run as a place? And how would you think? How do you think it's like run well at the moment in terms of? I mean, obviously, like as a government, is it run well? I mean, I'm not talking about politics here. I'm talking about more about like how like the policy that they've implemented, how they've tackled COVID, how they've kind of connected to like people here. Do you think they've run well as a government?
I would say it's less due to the government and more about the Hong Kong people.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, I think the people of Hong Kong have been one of the most united and effective in not only with dealing with coronavirus but dealing with social issues as well.
Yeah.
If you see how communities really come together. And that's what I think, that's what's so special about Hong Kong, is that because it's a city, like that kind of
its own identity,
the identity and the autonomy is preserved throughout that. And it's also interesting because if you look at the ancient philosophers, right?
Yeah.
The ancient philosophers of republicanism,
Yeah.
they've always said that the only time a republic can be virtuous is if it's small.
Yeah.
Because if it's too big, people don't care about each other anymore. They become consumed by greed. They become consumed by ideas of conquering other nations.
Yeah.
Whereas if a republic,
That's why a big country is never like the Mongol Empire has never been able to.
that's why the Mongol Empire, as soon as I think there's this theory that the furthest boundary from like the outer boundary of your empire needs to be 2 weeks horse ride from the capital.
Yeah, and they tried, and you know, they tried to kind of reduce that kind of timeline, right? It made the most effective.
The Mongols were good at conquering.
Yeah.
They were bad at holding.
Yes, but at the same time, Genghis Khan did make one of the most effective horse riding systems in the world, and by far, like, he would be like, every 200 miles, like, just to cover 200 miles, it would take him around like not a lot of time, right? Compared like back in the days, right? He'll have like horse riders ride for a whole day really quickly, and then immediately the next.
Yeah,
one
but that's not good.
But in general, again, too big to manage, and sometimes.
And also, I would also say this: empires will always collapse, and the reason is there's this German term Rapinwissenschaft, which is rapine economy. The only way for you to expand your economy for empires is to conquer other nations, take the resources, and have to keep growing. As soon as you stop in expansion, you're done.
Yeah.
You're overextended. Like
Yeah.
Napoleon in Russia.
Yeah, I know, I 100% agree. And so we both agree now that medium-sized countries is always better than big-sized countries.
Or decentralization.
Yeah, just smaller sized countries
Yeah.
always work. What do you think of healthcare in terms of like kind of, do you think universal healthcare works?
Look,
What do you think of a copay system? What do you think in terms of like there's a new movement in America where there's like
A
no
single
copay,
payer.
single pay system
Okay.
instead of a copay system. What do you think about Japan or the UK's model of like the NHS
Yeah.
of like a universal healthcare and taking on the brunt of like other people with taxpayers' money? What do you think of that?
Look, I am against single payer healthcare. I know that's not a popular thing to say nowadays because everyone should get healthcare, and I agree that everyone, like, we should be trying to provide everyone with good quality healthcare. The problem is, how do we get to it? If you look at the United Kingdom, for example, with the NHS, true, everyone gets covered. That's true, but what are the downsides? You get high taxes, lower productivity, doctors don't get paid as much, and what you get are long waiting times for different things. And the NHS is completely overextended. Look, there's nothing wrong with the individual nurses and the individual doctors. One of the hardest working and like the most conscientious people you ever know. But that being said, they're spread too thin, and then everything is provided. You want glasses are free. You want dental care is free. Everything's free, and what ends up happening is that everyone signs up. There are long waiting times, and the quality of care decreases. This is not the way to go.
So what would you think is your way to go?
I would say that I think there definitely does need to be market alternatives to healthcare, because here's the thing: it seems unfair that rich people can get better healthcare just because they're rich, right? But the fact that they can command higher prices means that, look, firstly, you increase the supply of healthcare because there's more incentive to provide it, and once these rich people start, look, if everyone is forced to pay like a same base rate, or if healthcare is free for everyone, guess what? Everyone's going to be waiting. What price does is that it sorts out people. And look, it's an imperfect world, and we know this, right? Resources are scarce. Doctors are scarce. Nurses are scarce. But what a market mechanism does is that it makes sure that some of those people get timely healthcare, and so those people like get out of the way.
I would say my model is, I actually disagree with you, Isaac, but
Yeah, go for it.
I don't like using insurance, so I disagree with copay.
I don't like the American insurance model either.
I hate it. But I think the best way to go
We're starting to get dark.
is,
Cool.
it's okay, but I think the best way to go is single pay, honestly.
Single payer.
But I would say single pay above market price. So in America, right now the current copay is around $25 for an appointment.
Yeah.
$25-$30 for a general appointment. And if you and it include insurance, that costs more money, and time, opportunity cost is also money as well. To like fill in those forms, and it takes time, a lot of time. For me, I would say using a single pay model of paying $40 would be
it's higher prices.
higher
too.
prices.
But wouldn't the poor also be adversely affected?
Well, I mean,
Because I guess under my model, it's not just the market, right? There's the
but
market
it's
and
still,
there's also
but
government.
what I'm saying,
So
it's still better.
mixed.
It's still better than paying high premiums on insurance, whereas it's a fixed price for how much you have to go to the doctor.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
And maybe there should be government schemes to help
I think
cover
the
for the poor
insurance
who-
scheme of America is the worst of both
Yeah.
worlds.
But what I'm gonna say is, like, for people who have are earn poverty and have a certain like income level, they should be covered.
Okay.
Universal healthcare for those people. But for some people who earn a certain amount, they have to pay the $40 every single time they want to go to the doctors, right? They have to, right?
And
$40
so that deters them from going to the doctor
just
when
for like a cold or whatever.
Yeah.
But it makes it more lucrative if, for example, you're going there and you literally have a serious leg injury. $40 is nothing if you want to save your leg,
absolutely.
right?
I can see it working in certain scenarios.
Exactly.
Look,
So that's why I like that model.
As we said earlier, everything's context dependent. Because if you're a large country, like, all of this shit is going to be really difficult. Whereas if you're a small city,
I'm gonna just keep talking. I'm gonna keep like kind of increasing.
Absolutely. But if you're a small city state, it becomes much easier to actually get a proper system of healthcare going. Because if everything's smaller, everything's tight, everything's compact, you've got a very efficient civil service. You can get things sorted really quickly.
Yeah.
And I would be, do tell me if we need to wrap up soon. But I will say this.
We've got 6 minutes left, so
yeah,
we're good.
I'll say places like Hong Kong and even Singapore, although I know a bit less about Singapore, but their healthcare systems are pretty good.
Yeah.
Moving away from national healthcare and more towards what other things do you think make a good society?
Education.
Education.
100%. I think education should be universal. That's, to be honest, for me that I don't think I can ever argue. I think healthcare I think should be universal to a certain degree, but I don't think you can argue about education, because education is by far the best way to kind of level the playing field. Also,
you know what?
I also believe. Wait, just really quickly.
Yeah,
I also
okay.
believe in Andrew Yang's $1,000
Oh,
dividend.
yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. I believe in that with the universal education. With Elizabeth
it
Warren's
feels like a
version.
very trendy Asian thing to believe.
It is, but at the same time, it's like, okay, everyone gets $1,000. Statistically, people who have $5,000 GDP per capita usually will care more about the environment and other issues around their community, and will be willing to give back. So if you raise if everyone has a roof over their head and everyone's happy and everyone are willing to contribute to society, you decrease crime rates, you decrease violence, right? You decrease all these different problems that are associated with money, because money is a big problem in society, right? You decrease all those issues, and therefore you have a more well-functioning society. So you decrease on stuff like medical costs and obesity rates and all these different things, and they all focus on these problems. Alongside that, if you have universal education, people won't have to pay high premiums like we do. Like at least me, I have to pay high premiums for university in the States, right? We don't feel like we're missing out on a chance because we're spending so much money just to get an education, and it shouldn't be expensive, right? Why should an education be this expensive for people? How does it level a playing field if it would cost $80,000 of us a year?
Right? Just to butt in, but
yeah, sure.
I do have a pet policy for education, and it's trade schools, because at the moment I feel like
but
everyone
who the fuck would want to go to trade school if like?
Okay, whoa.
Do you know what I mean?
That's why let me finish. I feel like society has, I feel like the value of a university degree has been inflated to a massive degree. I would actually prefer to see people look. Academia is not for everyone. And lots of smart people don't like to go into academia, or they don't want to do those kind of subjects. And that's completely okay. Why can't society support people who want to be construction workers, like welders or plumbers or electricians? I feel like there is a massive skills shortage across the developed world for these skills. And look, if you're like a top of the line plumber, like you know what you're doing, or an electrician, or even a steel welder.
There should be some sort of hierarchy for you.
And look, they get paid a lot of money, right? They get some of these guys get paid more than doctors, or on a comparable level to doctors.
Yeah.
So why isn't society doing more to support that? So instead of pumping so much money into universities and university subsidies, I would like to see that money go instead to real people doing real jobs. Because I'm sorry, if you're doing a gender studies or a sociology degree, you should not be subsidized on taxpayer money.
I know you're big on that on the gender studies thing, big on
women's
studies. Yeah. Oh my God, that's crazy. But I would say this, right? Yes, absolutely. I think, but we have to kind of remove the stigma of
yeah, because there should be no stigma with working with your hands. I actually went to a plumbing course, right? A 2-day plumbing course. That shit is hard.
I feel like once you get to know a field, then you have so much more respect for it than you were going in.
People always say, "Oh, plumbers, all they do is fix my toilet. They must be dumb people." No, they're not. If you realize how complicated your piping systems are, your systems of water delivery are, you would respect plumbers so much more, because I'm telling you, what they do.
It's just demonized as a bad kind of. It's just demonized as a bad subject. Sorry, there's kids around. It's just demonized as a bad subject.
That's another part of a good society, right? You want a strong, healthy
younger generation
to kind of carry on the legacy of a great nation or a great city.
100%. Okay, what do you think about government policies?
Government, in general?
What do you think about a government? What should a government? What's an ideal government for you?
The best government is that governs least, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. I don't want, first of all, it is a matter of principle. I think the stronger the government is, the bigger it gets, the less autonomy individual people get, and the less freedom they have.
Yeah.
So if you want a community which is self-reliant, which is independent, which is capable of getting things
Yeah.
done, you need to get that kind of paternalistic government.
Do you
out
think
of the way.
having a strong character like New Zealand's like Jessica Ardern is like a great way to start in terms of running your country?
Here's the thing. It's good to have a strong leader, right?
Yeah.
But too often, people confuse good policies with charismatic leadership. So if you look at all dictatorships, right? Like these guys, every single dictator or every
But how can
single
you
tyrant
compare
in
Jessica
the
Ardern to
no,
Adolf Hitler, for example?
yeah, but it's, I would say it's the same principle, right? Because no, obviously I'm not saying Jessica Ardern is in the same class as Hitler even remotely. But when people start worshipping the person instead of worshipping the common good, that's when things get bad. Look, I think like New Zealand has done a really great job, like in its prime minister. I think she's done a really great job.
Yeah.
But if we start worshipping like Ardern instead of the welfare of New Zealand, that's when things get
And they're not
awry.
looking towards like
Yeah.
other parties.
Look,
that-
strong leaders are only one part of it. A really sufficient and a really free, strong community should not have to have a strong leader all the time in
Yeah.
order to work properly. It should be like in my ideal society, like a decentralized kind of city-state. You should have an absolutely shit government, and things should still be going well.
Yeah.
Because what makes or breaks a society should not be the government; it should be the people.
Yeah.
If it's
And,
a- if
and
it's-
just
yeah.
and just to wrap things up really quickly, I would say my ideal kind of society would be a society where there is some sort of leadership, like prominent leadership, where it's not just about leadership. I wouldn't say like shit leadership, but I would say leadership that will.
No,
implement
I'm not advocating for shit leadership. I'm saying
Yeah.
even if there's
Yeah,
shit
yeah, I'm saying
leadership,
leadership that will be a role model to people, right? Not just, and will listen to the people and also listen to the opinions of different people. I think that's the most important thing. And also will do what's best for
kind of an
like,
open society.
an open society. We'll do the best for its people, right?
Right.
100%. I think and the other thing is, I think there should be some sort of socialist measures in place,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? For example, with inelastic goods, there should be some sort of government intervention.
Right.
Just for example, education, 100%, medical care, 100%. There should be price floors for those, for medical care, and there should be a price ceiling for medical care, and there should also be a education. There should be a price cap on education. I also believe that with certain with policies, they should encourage free market as much as they can. Try to decrease taxes as much as they can, but not affecting like basic necessity goods. So
Okay.
food, for example. I think food is such an important part. There should be a price cap on most foods, but except for luxuries. And that's how I think a good society should be run.
Right.
With some level of Keynesianism, with some level of intervention, but also with some level of free market.
I think
a good balance of both.
I think what I think a good society is that, look, sometimes it's going to be better to adopt socialistic measures. Sometimes it's going to be better to
Yeah.
have free market measures.
And that's why I have a problem with the USA, because they always think socialism is bad, but it's not.
Well,
Sometimes socialism works to a certain
that's
degree.
why I would like to make a case for decentralized local government, and that's because the needs of each community is different, and only when the local authorities are in touch with the people, only when they're serving the people, can they know what is needed for each community. And that's what I think small, like it's actually better for you to be smaller than bigger.
Yeah, 110%. Yeah.
Secondly, I think that no matter what kind of policy your government is trying to push through in a society, you need a couple of things. You need a healthy populace, because look, if you're all obese, you're not going to get shit done.
Yeah.
You need a kind of country which is proud of its collective identity, so that they
Yeah.
stick up for one another. They're proud to be part of, identify with that community, in the same way that you'd be proud to be identified as like one gym or another gym,
Yeah.
right? And finally, I think they need to be willing to be self-reliant and independent. No matter what type of healthcare system or educational system they get, they need to be go-getters. They need to be willing to take opportunities forward and work hard for those opportunities.
Yeah.
Because even if you've got the best government, right, and you've got natural reserves, natural oil, and you've got lots of money in government coffers, you've got free universal healthcare, you've got free universal education. If the people don't give a shit about their own futures, nothing's going to change. Things are just going to get worse. So that's how I would sum up a good society.
And on that note, we'll be wrapping the Zero Filter podcast, the 14th episode. Thanks for listening, guys. And
I stop slapping my knee.
if you guys like that episode, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. The camera's gonna die soon, so Without further ado, peace.